Hello, guys. Welcome live to my channel, Conversation with Susuana. It's good to have you all. Welcome again. So, I today I'm going to take us through the presentation. And if you're watching live, wherever you're watching, you can share this and invite others to join us, and that will be great. So yeah, I'm going to take us through this conversation on consciousness bias. Conscious bias. Oh, and what do we mean when we're talking about conscious bias? I'm going to take us through that, and you all have the opportunity to on in the comment space to tell me how do you define conscious bias. So just go into the comment space and put your definition there and tell me what you think. So to me, this whole idea of conscious bias is something that really resonate with myself, and this has resonate with me for quite a long time. It's an ideology that has been recognized in within the academic circle, and it's a conceptualization of an idea, which is emerging and is an evolutional that is evolutional ideology about how human beings, how we think, and our response, and how we engage, and the things that we see as concerning to us. And how do we pursue these details or highlight ideas? How do we identify key players and the interconnection and having conversation around the ideology of conscious bias? It's we talk a lot about racism. We talk about how people see us or see other people, and the idea of supporting this work and engaging in a genealogy of ideas, having genuine thoughts and thinking, experiment a different type of application or an academic reception or an analytical method of how we analyze what is a conscious bias, and guidance for disclosure, putting it within our policies and practice in our places of work and the things that we do. How do we demonstrate it? The disclosure, historically, content of developing an idea and an ideology that, puzzles us. So unpacking these constitute and performative aspect of that ontology and the epistemology of this framework through different type of external and self reception to illustrate a social and a political action. So this is what the idea of this means. considering questions and perspective of other people. There's so much unanswered and overlooked things that we overlook. It's just so much disputes that can serve us and that we can engage and create a framework that works when it comes to the performance and the self-reception, and how do we illustrate this in terms of social life and political action. What are the things that pulses us? So these are the things that as are really but these are conversations that I feel we could have. This conscious bias and ideology that myself, I've received some. I've given it a lot of thought, and I just felt that I should just put this out there and present this, and just putting it out there, and then sharing my thoughts and thinking what I'm thinking with everyone. And this is what this is all about. So it's about us having a critical examination of the intentional bias that we all have in decisions making. So when you're making decisions, most of the decisions we make as individuals, most of all these decisions we make comes in based on our own, the way we think about things, our own ideology of the way we think about it, the way we see things. And none of us, critically, none of us can be exempted from this. So, what is a conscious bias? What do we refer to that? And how do I see it? Now, so a conscious bias refers to the intention and the deliberate prejudice. These are deliberate prejudice or favoritism that influence our decisions making process. And every one of us has this. Understanding this type of bias is crucial for recognizing how our choices impact others and the overall equity in our communities. And by examining our own conscious biases, we can foster more inclusive environments. You know, we all as individual, each of one of us have this ideology within us. And the foundation of most of this ideology comes from our background and where we live, the environment we are, the people who brought us up, the society we belong to, the community in which we belong to, your tribe, your nations, everything, your education, your social life, all these comes together in and it determines, it gives the foundational background to how we think and how we do things. None of us can say we none of us can actually really exempt ourselves when it comes to the type of bias which we have. We just need to understand this type of bias that is crucial for recognizing how our choices, the choices we make, how it impacts ourselves and others around us, and the overall equity in our community, taking responsibility, for those decisions, taking responsibility for how we act or how we behave. And by examining our own consciousness biases, we all have one, we can foster an inclusive, diverse, engaging environment, not just with ourselves, but with others around us. So This is to introduce you guys to conscious bias. Conscious bias, is a critical examination of our intentions, everybody's intentions, and how we deal with things around us. What are the steps that we take? How do we allow this to, to really impact us? How do we allow it to impact us? These is important. These are things that is important and that we have to really account for it, even when we don't want to. But it is important that we are able to account for this. I want this conversation to be a two-way conversation, and I would really appreciate that if we go into the comment space, wherever you're watching these, or when you have the opportunity to see these, to engage. So, what is conscious bias? What is conscious bias? Consciousness bias, conscious bias. What is conscious bias? So, whatever your definition is, you can let me know in the comment space. And you can always communicate this through to us as well. So for me, my definition of what conscious bias means is an intentional and deliberate prejudice explained. Now you see the word prejudice, those each word is the definition was well thought out, intentional and deliberate prejudice explained. So that's what I'm trying to do. That's what it is. It's about explaining what our deliberate prejudice and intention could mean. Now, when I say deliberate, is because you are aware of it, but you have to take ownership of it. You are aware of it, and then you take ownership, and it's intentional. Now, it is not something that is negative. It's something you become aware in different ways, and he's taking ownership. These are just prejudice we have, so let me give you an example of something that could really give you an insight to what I'm saying. There's these things that people joked about, you know about when you go back, you never come back again. All those kind of funny things. And we say things, and those things you say them, but it's actually coming from something. It's coming from somewhere. It's not those words. It's coming from, sorry, it's coming from lived experience. It's coming from assumption of people, and through lived experience people have come to assume this, and it has become something people make references and talk about, and it could be used as deliberately as a prejudice against others, but we live it. So I want you to think of things that you know that you're aware of, and that you have a consciousness bias towards. And each of us have a conscious biases within us. And it comes from our lived experience. So if there's anything you can think of, you can just engage with me by dropping these into the comment space. So conscious biases refer to the intentional choices we make that reflect our preferences or prejudice. It could be your preferences, and it could be a prejudice you have. Now, prejudice is not something negative. It's just something that you have, and that you have to own to it. And it's you, based on those things, this prejudice that you have, you make a lot of decisions based on those assumptions. So unlike unconscious bias, which operates automatically which operates automatically. A conscious bias involves a clear awareness of our decision, a clear awareness of our decisions that may favor one group over the other. We use it consciously. We use it consciously. We are aware of what we are doing. You use it consciously, and it may favor one group over the other. It is crucial to recognize conscious bias, as it can significantly influence interaction and opportunities in diverse settings. So I'll say that again. It is and crucial that we recognize this conscious bias, as it can significantly influence interactions and opportunities in diverse settings. So it is important that we know it. So what is conscious bias? I said it is intentional and deliberate prejudice being explained. Being explained. And yeah, so I understand that, most of us are, watching this and you're thinking, oh yeah, what is it that's, what is this? What does this mean for me? And what is she talking about? What does this mean for me? What is this talking about? So I'll give you an explanation between a conscious bias versus unconscious bias. And there's a lot of people to talk about unconscious bias, but our focus there is unconscious bias, and just give you a clear distinct between the two, so that when you're trying to figure out what is she saying. So intentional awareness. So remember that intentional awareness versus automatic association. Versus automatic association. That's what. So a conscious bias characteristics, these are characteristics that you will see within conscious bias. One is aware. I kept repeating that. You're aware of it, and you have to be aware of it. You're aware of it, and you have to take ownership of that, accept it, deliberate, explicit, and intentional. These are characteristics of conscious bias. You're aware, it's deliberate, it's explicit, and it's intentional. So, what are the characteristics of unconscious bias? What are the characteristics? Unaware, automatic, implicit, involuntary. Involuntary. So that is the distinct between a conscious bias and an unconscious bias. That is the distinct between them. And for the purpose of this, for the purpose of this, and with the intention of the message that we have, and for the purpose of this conversation that we're talking about, this is what we all need to understand about this. Unfortunately, this conversation that we are having, this is what we need to understand about it, what it means to us, and how we define it, how we define it. So myself, I pioneer this conceptualized ideology of conscious bias. I pioneer it. This is something that I'm, experimental with it and trying to bring, the ideology and bring the conversation, engaging the conscience, around conscious bias ideology. And like I said, I pioneers this. So we're going to, open this conversation, really open this conversation to everyone, to start having this conversation and to understand the distinct differences between the two, and to really support us in focusing on conscious bias and the difference that this will this makes in our society, the difference that this makes in our community, the the difference that it's really celebrates within our own community. It is crucial. It is really crucial that we understand the differences that it makes. It's crucial that we dive into these key areas and how it affects us within our society, um, the way we respond to it, and how we engage others around this conversation of conscious bias. So, how do I conceive this idea of conscious bias? How do I distill it from a dialogue within the past and contemporary scholars and their thoughts around this, and therefore paralleling the conceptualization, opening and ordering through combinatory kind of intellectual analyzing, across levels of analysis and understanding this domain of conscious bias, understanding this domain. How do this conversation comes up? How do I generate this conversation? How do we go about it? How do we structure it? What are the strategy in which we are pushing this narrative of conscious bias, which I'm trying to parallelize the conceptualization of it, parallelizing the conceptualization of this. And these conversations are, are important. It's important that we have this conversation. It is important that we engage ourselves in this conversation, and it is important that we understand the value that this brings to us. It is important that we understand it, that the value it brings to us, that we do understand this value that this brings to us. And for those of us that are listening, we can easily take a moment take our time out to just listen, and then just deliberate in our thoughts around what this means. Deliberate within our thoughts what this means to us, so that we can actually really have this conversation between us. So yes, that is what this conversation on conscious bias. So we've talked about what is conscious bias. We've talked about how the conceptualization or this ideology started with myself, Susuana Olatunji Komolafe, and where I'm going with is conceptualization of this idea of conscious bias, and how it is conceived by myself. It's conceived through lived experience. It's conceived through understanding of my own self, my own consciousness, biases that I have, and how these really affect what is inclusive, and how I deal with the diversity in my own environment and within my own circle and to the community. And this ideology that I'm trying to conceptualize, which is being pioneered by myself, this conscious bias, is something that I want us to have a clear understanding with an intentional awareness of what it means and the differences between the conscious versus unconscious bias. What is the differences, and why is this important for us to really hold on to this? Why is it important for us to celebrate this? Why is it important for us to understand this ideology and what it means, what it really means for us? So this is what we've gone through. We've gone through what is a conscious bias. I said it is intentional and deliberate prejudice being explained. Being explained. We talk about the introduction to conscious bias, a critical examination of intentional biases in decision making, initiated by myself, Dr. Susuana Olatunji Komolafe. The conscious bias refer to the intentional and deliberate prejudice or favoritism that influence, remember, it influence our decision making process. And understanding this type of bias is crucial for recognizing how our choices impact others and the overall equity in our community, within our community, and in our decisions. Conscious bias. So I hope we've been able to really celebrate this, and I hope that it really resonates with us, that it does resonate with us, and it's something that we can really just really understand and celebrate. So there's more of this coming, which we will have the opportunity. So this is just the introductory section, and we're going to go on and continue this. So this is an introductory section. So thank you all for joining me on Conversation with Susanna. And thank you all for watching. I hope that watching these makes meaning to each one of us, and that we can resonate with what this ideology really means to us, and then we can actively engage on this conversation, with ourselves and with others as well, and we can resonate with what this actually really do mean for us, and that we can resonate with it. So thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for being part of the conversation. The conversation continues. You have the opportunity to go into the chat space and share your own thoughts and your own ideas, and whatever you're thinking, you can share it with us. The opportunity is there for you guys to do that on on the platform there, to go into the chat boards and engage us in meaningful conversation around what it means to you, what it means to us, and how you see this as continue to engage with us on this conversation on conscious bias. You can also share with us in the chat space, what are your own consciousness biases that you have? Are you aware that you have it? Are you honing on to it? Are you accepting it as something that you do carry with you, and that you're not, shying away from this as something that you do, because you have to be aware of it. You have to accept that responsibility for it, without having to um, feel any need to explain yourself, but just to have ownership of this, and accept that this is something that you live with. This is something you do, and this is something that it's just part of our lived experience. It is part of our lived experience, and it is important that we will accept it as a part of our lived experiences in our lives, and that we take ownership of these, and we allow it to really change our narrative of the way we see things and the way we do things. Let's have this conversation. This is a conversation we need to have with ourselves. These are conversations we need to hold on to. These are conversations that has to be meaningful to us. It is important that we do this. It is important that we do accept this and allow it to flourish, and be meaningful to us in our critical thinking. So thank you all in this conversation. I'm looking forward to continue the conversation with us all, and that we can all resonate with this. With this. Thank you.